look at in a different manner. We like to look at salaries and fringe and other expenses. Your salary and fringe make up 71% of your budget for your general fund. And so this is just showing you what is your budget, what have we spent thus far. You'll see your fringe is a higher number, and that's because of that Barnstable County retirement assessment that we pay on an annual basis. The other funding uses that you see here, that $650,000, that's a transfer out for PFAS operations and maintenance. That didn't happen until October. So it happened at the very beginning of October. So you'll see that in the second quarter, the expenditure. And this is just a busy slide here, but this is just showing you what was your original appropriation by department and what was expended. And just to reiterate one more time, that miscellaneous and contingency expense line item here, where you see that it's expended 73.7%, you would want to question that. And that again goes back to the Barnstable County Retirement Association annual assessment. Moving forward, this is a summary. I mean, your revenues collected, the revenues collected are consistent with what we anticipated for the first quarter. Your lab revenues, as I had pointed out earlier, are strong. Your expenditures are what we anticipated, and they're on pace. And then Registry of Deeds is up 13% over the prior year as of October 31st.
So we'll be well poised when the bubble bursts.
Yeah,
right?
it will. It'll be poised. Yeah, we'll be poised.
Yeah. On the laboratory revenues, can you go back to that? I'm glad to hear that. I'm assuming it's with all the adjustments and
Correct.
and everything that we approved.
Yes.
Right, and their ability to do more.
Yes.
Are we still looking to sort of try to break even? No, we're not going to break even.
Well, not by virtue of, we haven't set a policy to break even.
Okay. How much of the revenues then are going to cover expenses? Well, do we have an idea?
I don't think that the rates were set in that manner. I do believe that we are looking to undertake a study, which is why Mark Abrams said, well, to undertake a study of departments and what departments should be charging for rates.
So we're going to take another pass at this. We're going to take another look at this.
But not just the lab.
Huh?
Not just the laboratory.
Okay, on all.
Mhm.
Okay,
That's what we're hoping.
no, I think that's good. I thought we were a little bit further along than we are, but that's certainly important to keep that kind of commitment.
There's only so many hours in the day.
I think the previous health department head was very optimistic about our ability to cover expenses, That's my recall. It's a good
You're
result.
always on that.
Yeah.
Glass half full.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm providing you the information with regard to Cape Cod Commission as well. This is their revenue broken out by their line items in their revenue. And, I wouldn't be too alarmed with regard to, the small amount of revenue that's been collected thus far in the first quarter. Again, the assessment, which is the last line item, environmental protection is listed here, it was not due in the first quarter. And as such, that makes up, a significant portion of their revenue. So that's not. And their expenses broken down here stay at the same as I've provided for the general fund, salaries, fringe, and other expenses, and then their expenditures to date, which is tracking as anticipated. And then providing the same information for dredge season. The dredging season just began, and so there have been no bills that really have gone out. This was a receivable that was booked for year end 25, and that was collected in 26. And then here is the expenses that dredge in the same manner, salaries, fringe, and other expenses. You'll see the other expenses, which is what I was referring to before, where they've had some significant repairs that they've had to undertake for some of their equipment. So I always like to talk about undesignated or unreserved fund balance. General fund, just under $11 million. And we watch cash balances as they equate to unreserved fund balance, and I'll get to, some reasons why we track them. But we look to have sufficient reserves in place so that we have adequate cash flows to meet our vendor and payroll responsibilities, to meet our debt responsibilities. We like to make sure that we have sufficient funds to weather the storm, if you will. And then in addition to that, as I had mentioned before, we had significant outflows with Barnstable County Retirement Association as of July 1st. It was $4.2 million, and that was just for our general fund, Cape Cod Commission, and dredge. That didn't include sheriff. Sheriff's portion, we get reimbursed. We haven't been reimbursed yet. That was over $2 million that we had to expend. So we have to make sure we have sufficient cash flows in place.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a list, and I don't want to read it all to you, but, we want to make sure that we go out to the bond market and we borrow funds for capital projects that we're undertaking. Standard & Poor's is looking to us and ensuring that we're able to meet our obligations. So this is just an example of what we track. This is our cash, general fund cash, and it dates back by month to 2017. And if we look at 2025, we see a significant dip. And we were watching that very closely last September and October. This is when we transferred the $14 million out to the Revenue Stabilization Fund that we have with MMDP. And we came very close to not sleeping at night.
Right.
So this is what we're tracking on a regular basis.
Right.
We're looking at our cash balances, every fund, on a monthly basis,
Mm-hmm.
and transferring funds from what we would consider our money market or savings accounts into our active accounts where we're funding payroll and vendor payments.
Right.
We're also tracking, this would be Cape Cod Commission. So as far as Cape Cod Commission, this is restricted fund balance. We're tracking their cash equivalents versus their restricted fund balance, and they should mirror each other, and they do here.
Mm-hmm.
We're also tracking items like this for dredge, and these pretty much mirror each other, right?
Little
We're
dips and
right. We're looking at the blue line, which is their retained earnings, and we're seeing how that dropped.
Right.
And then we're seeing how their cash balances dropped, and we're seeing where their cash balances are today.
Right.
And
on a positive trend.
it was on a positive trend, and we can see that
Spend it that way.
we've expended some funds to support capital, and we just started our dredging.
Right.
So, but we're watching this on a monthly
I
basis.
think we have to, I think this is the reason, one of the main reasons why we're gonna have to look at the dredge rates again and
Yeah.
make some projections in terms of how we can keep this operation afloat. This is the one sort of money pit department that we have in county government. And that's not to say anything bad about the department or the work or the team or the crew.
But it's a cost.
It's just the nature of the business. The dredge
Right.
business is so difficult. challenging,
It has so
right?
many variables you have to depend on that you can't control.
So
Like
we're
that.
gonna have to figure out, we have this pending report that's hanging out there, on recommendations from Leslie Ann McGee and her firm and her team in terms of things that we need to be thinking about looking ahead that can provide some greater assurance on the revenue stream. So on the dredge department, I think looking ahead, this sort of underscores, from my point of view, the urgency of addressing rates again. We may need to retain her to do a rate report and update with a set of recommendations.
Mhm.
So I think that's on our list of things to talk about at a future meeting, as well as making recommendations on her report about going forward, because every time we have a dredge summit and we go over the permitting issues, we never can really break away with a great deal of confidence that projects are going to be easily permitted. We can try to streamline, but there's only so much that's within our control. But we have to exercise more control on the permitting side. So I think, and unless we do that, the rates are just going to have to keep going up and accept a fairly robust clip in the years ahead. So this is, in talking about the budget and looking ahead, this is an area that we're going to spend a lot of time on to address. So I'm glad that you stopped on this slide for a few minutes, because I'm really worried about the dredge department going forward.
And my last comment, I guess, is if you had a question of why I'm calling this a cash equivalent, it's because we manage cash in a different way, or not any different than any other governmental entity. We pool cash. It's what we call it. It's a pooled cash environment, and so we're managing cash as we, if you will, we centralize the banks. Otherwise, we'd have 101 cash accounts, which is just not manageable. That's the old way, very old way of managing multiple funds. And so that's just provide you with an explanation of how the treasurer manages cash here in Barnstable County and every other governmental entity as well. So if you have particular questions, or if you'd like to discuss any of the slides I provided, be happy to do so.
I think a lot of my questions that come from this are going to be in the next item on the agenda, the budget discussion, because I think this is it's great to start with this, because I think it all relates to how we look at the budget for the coming fiscal year. So I'm happy to hold my points until we get to the next section.
The next one, and you're here to answer anything. So,
Yes, just like to compliment Carol and her staff. I mean, in presenting this budget, and also in the past, and providing internet access to how we manage funds. I mean, it's probably as transparent as I've ever experienced anywhere. I mean, numbers are not my thing, so I appreciate putting them in a form which I can get my hand around. So
right.
you do a great job for the presentation. It's our job to make the numbers work. It's your job to tell us what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. We all concur on space.
Suggestion that I made last Friday.
Okay, thank you, Carol.
Do you
All
want to take it?
right, moving on along.
You're sticking around for the next one.
Yes, yeah. We're on to item B of general business under 6th, and we are now going to have our administrator, Michael Dutton, go over the fiscal year 2027 budget process.
Well, thank you. And Commissioner Bergstrom's point about numbers not being everybody's thing is certainly
Appreciate
well taken. Yeah, appreciated and well taken, because they're not everybody's thing. And anybody that is an observer of county government, in particular, our budget isn't necessarily reflective of town budgets that people may be more used to. So we try to be extremely transparent, as transparent as we can possibly be. We don't want to give people information that's not accurate by any means, but as soon as we have information, we want to share it, and that's our practice. In any case, the budget process or the budget season starts with identifying the correct process. And the memo I have put in front of you is my suggestion between the county commissioners and the Assembly of Delegates, who will also see this memorandum after you review it. Basically the memo is my suggestion on how we move forward with this year's budget. There are some minor changes. I'll tell you what the minor changes are. Instead of having every department come in to your meeting, let us have those sessions, get into the nitty gritty of the numbers, and let present a consolidated budget to you, at which time any department head you actually do want to talk to, because there's some weird things in the budget or we haven't done a good enough job explaining, we can certainly invite them in, and you can quiz them about what their spending plans are for fiscal 27. So that's really, from the commissioner's standpoint, that's the biggest change. We will continue to present the capital budget prior to the operating budget, which is good practice. The capital budget, we need to know what our capital expenditures are going to be before we can properly budget those for the following fiscal year. But just as a little bit of a preview, the capital budget, I don't anticipate a lot of spending, number one, and I don't anticipate
a lot of spending or a lot of new spending.
A lot of new spending. Yeah, we have some projects that are underway and we're in the middle of, but and those will continue. But given the fact that we've got a report that's telling us we've got 70 some odd million dollars of deferred capital spending, we're not, and that's still going through its motions. We're not going to be loading up capital spending this year by any means. In any case, that's sort of the commissioner's side of the thing, of the budget process. The other side is the Assembly of Delegates. With the Assembly of Delegates, I've had a chance to meet with the new speaker, who is very supportive of at least the theory of what I'm proposing, and that is, I will go, streamlining. I will go up to the Assembly of Delegates instead of every single department head going up there. I will present the total budget. I'll answer any questions, and then the Assembly takes the departmental budgets and sends those off to the appropriate committees. The committees will do their work. I'll go to the committee meetings. The department head will go to the committee meetings, get all the questions answered. The budget will then come back to the full assembly. If the full assembly has more questions, I'll be there to answer those. But I'm just trying to create essentially what I'm trying to do is to create a consistent face, in front of you and then in front of the assembly, so that we can articulate the budget in very consistent terms, and I think that will help the process along quite a bit. Doesn't foreclose the opportunity for the department head to come in. If the department head wants to come in, absolutely, but it's designed mostly to provide a streamlined process and let the department heads do what we employ them to do, and that is run their departments.
Exactly.
So that's
a lot of time taken from departments in the previous, the way this has been done.
yeah, but
And it's duplicit, we duplicate the process, and I like this.
I will say though that I'm very conscious of being perceived as becoming sort of a barrier between the elected officials and the department heads, and I don't want it to seem that way. So that's why I constantly say any department head you want to see, absolutely, absolutely. So
I think it would also be helpful is once a schedule's been developed with the assembly and the various committees that are going to be looking at various departments, I think it'd be helpful just if we could get that information as well.
Mhm.
In one of my prior town administrator experiences, we would do joint meetings where the select board manager, the manager obviously is developing the budget with the department heads, but when we had meetings with the departments, we did them together. I think Harwich did that.
And your
For a while.
finance committee.
Yeah, so I'd have the budget oversight committee, the finance committee come in, meet with the selectmen together. We would have one big round table, or big U.
Oh, we tried
And
that, but.
I think we tried that once before. I think what's helpful is that everybody, see, the thing that I like about that is that everybody hears the same information, all
Exactly.
right? And the same question. And there's no redundancy whatsoever. It's very streamlined, it's very efficient. And when I was in Brewster as the administrator, we did it on one day. We took a Saturday. We would take Saturday. We'd find a right Saturday.
Mhm.
We'd have coffee, pastries in the morning. We'd bring in lunch. It would be a working lunch, working day. People could come in casual, come as they are, and people loved it, and I think they're still doing it. So I think the other thing that it did was it brought the bodies to work together. All right, something that we haven't been known for, quite frankly, over the years. So doing joint meetings and getting everybody in the same room and having it becomes one place where you're actually having a conversation about the county. So to the extent that that can be facilitated, I think, quite frankly, it could provide a lot of very positive benefits in a variety of areas. Like I felt that the friction in Brewster, I felt that at the time that I was there, the friction between the select board and the finance committee was pretty intense. And the bodies were going in completely different directions, right? Where have we heard that before?
Right.
And by getting everybody in the same room and having the deliberations and the discussions together, it broke down some barriers and it got people really to understand each other, where they're coming from, what they're doing and what they're accomplishing, trying to accomplish. And in the long run, it made life easier for the departments because they felt that they weren't in the middle of dueling committees, dueling priorities. So something to think about.
We have in our finance, and I'll see it'll acknowledge in a second, Ron, but we also have a strong finance department now. I mean, people who actually understand, they've been on there long enough, and we have a new guy who actually understands budgets. And we have also done a lot of joint hearings, reviewing the budget. How are we going to go into town meeting? How does this this all adding up the way it should? And it's been really helpful. So I know that there's been resistance to that here, but they have to understand that the end product is not about us, really. It's about having a solid county going forward, and because we all change, and we got to think about the future. So, Ron.
Yeah, just let's get into the practical matter of the march of the budget through the process. My understanding, normally when I was in the speakership, and I think even before that, commissioners would present the budget to the assembly. The assembly would then apportion it to the various committees, and they would look at it. But at that point, they would have the appropriate department head in front of them in the initial. I'm talking about the committees would have the initial at this time. In this new process, it seems like they are going to get the budget. They are going to look at, whatever committee, Human Services Committee or the Public Services Committee, going to get their share of the budget. They are then going to look at it. They're going to submit questions to you.
But he's going to be at those meetings.
You'll be at those meetings.
So I'll be at those meetings, and those are the meetings where I would expect the department heads to come and answer questions, or do a mini.
The initial committee meeting.
Right.
Okay.
The committee meetings. Yeah, not the assembly meetings per se, but the initial committee meetings.
I don't want to drag the department heads more than once in front of you.
Exactly.
So if they have questions, that's the time to ask and get the answers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And inevitably, having said that, and that's the way the process should work, inevitably somebody on the assembly will ask a question, one of the delegates will ask a question in front of the full body, and that's fine. To the extent that I can answer those questions, great. If I can't answer those questions, then I'll come back.
There's a difference between reviewing the budget and asking questions so that they understand the budget and debating the actual budget. I mean, the department heads mean, they in a sense are defending their budget, but basically it's the commissioner's budget. In other
Mhm.
words, they're gonna say, you know, they're looking at them and say, well, why are you doing this? You know, they're saying, well, there it is in front of you, you know, if they have questions on it, it's their right to question it and to change it if they have to, but I don't want, you know, I've been to a lot of assembly meetings and a lot of commissioners meetings, and they can deteriorate into a debate. You really don't want to debate during a review process. But I do want to understand what's going on.
Right. And I that's a point really well taken. And I think in terms of understanding what those numbers are and what's behind those numbers,
Yeah.
that's an education that I can you know bring the assembly through. And I think the department heads can articulate very well what particular line items are for. And
You'll take
so
all the flack, so we don't have to.
that's my job.
Yeah, that's his job. And also, if they have follow-up questions, they go through you.
Ideally,
They
yeah.
don't go
Yeah.
right to the department.
Yeah.
No, and that's
That's
what.
right.
And that's really,
Yeah.
that was being done. And it starts to put the department head in the middle and having conflicting, like, oh, well.
Well, you never, you know, and
Well.
you know, I explained to the assembly last year, you know, there's some, I understand there's some level of communication that's always going to happen.
Right.
You know, people are friends, you know, so, you know,
Small place.
it's a small place. So there's going to be some level of communication. And all I asked was that, you know, if you can channel your questions through me, copy me on your questions, so at least I know, you know, what the question is, because very often, sometimes the nuance of the question gets lost. And so the question that a delegate might be asking is not the question that the department head is answering. So we're trying to eliminate some of that kind of
Well, you know, the reality
miscommunication.
is that's language that's specified in the charter.
Right.
All right, this is not an area where there should be a lot of discretion. And I think the way you're approaching it is it's more than general.
And I think it's important that these chairs of the various committees consolidate the questions so that you're not having
Yes.
5 people asking the same question, especially when in the past, unfortunately, a lot of it was done by phone or email, you know, next thing you know, you're answering to 12 people. Whereas I see that obviously it's in our interest to have everything done as quickly and as easily as possible, you know.
That's the objective. You know, and we're obviously I recognize that, you know, you've got 2 sort of approval processes here. And so, you know, that build, you know, and the provisions of the charter kind of dictate some of the timeline, but I'm just within those rules and restrictions, I'm trying to, you know, compress it and make it as easy as possible for everybody, quite honestly.
So,
Any other questions? Yeah.
I mean, I'm very comfortable with what you've laid out here.
Mhm.
And, you know, again, this is just for this year. All right,
Correct.
Let's see how it works.
Correct.
See if it works.
If this doesn't work, we'll try something else or go back to the old ways of doing things. So I'm fine with that. I would like to comment just a little bit in terms of on the priorities and the strategic side, because I honestly believe, you know, after Carol's last presentation, sort of laying out the big picture, you know, I do think that we need to be extra cautious and very concerned about the financial landscape here. I do think we have to start making tough decisions in this particular budget. The more we defer, the more difficult we're going to be making it later on. So, bless you. So I think it's important to be aggressive with this budget cycle and preparing this budget, aggressive in identifying efficiencies. I think we need to be aggressive in finding areas where we can recoup overhead. All right. We have departments that get a lot of overhead support. We need to be figuring out ways to get adequate return on that. You know, because in the past, that's always been a challenge. But I think, as Ron had said, we've got a very capable finance director and a very capable team. I think there should be no problem in us being able to recoup that. And so when I look at some of the other departments and what they're doing and where they're going, I believe in this budget cycle, we should be able to recoup more in overhead. So that's something that I'm gonna be looking for when the budget's prepared and we get our first crack at it. I'm gonna want to see more in terms of recovery on the overhead, right? So let me just get that out there. In the areas of efficiencies, one of my biggest pet peeves with respect to how we manage is all of the multiple areas of duplication, right? One area is communication.
Right.
We have so many different communication directors, specialists, people interacting with the media on their own,
Mhm.
which makes it almost impossible for our communications department to do a good job. And sometimes we're stepping on each other's story. So we've got to put an end to that. All right. So I'm going to leave it up to you on how to do it, but I'm going to be looking for something in this budget process that simplifies and ends the redundancy there. All right. If I were to eliminate all those positions, I could probably save a lot of money. I'm not proposing that we do that,
Right.
but that is something that we need to really consider in the budget review process with the department. So I'm going to lay that out there, and I'm going to be looking for some real reforms there, Madam Chair. Other areas, obviously, that we need to look at, they're all well known. The dredge, we need to, as a board, and eventually as the working with the assembly, need to look at more reforms, more changes, more improvements there, both in terms of the structure and what we do, the permitting, solving that problem, and acting on the recommendations of Leslie Ann. But we also need to begin the process of putting in place yet a new fee structure going forward. We can't let that wait. So I'm going to be looking for, as we move ahead, looking for where we can schedule and how we can put that in. I do want to see a structurally balanced budget. I don't want to see us spending free cash. All right. No more, no, we're done with that. All right, we're done with that. All right, so we got to tighten the belt. So this is the year we get serious about dealing with the financial cliff that's out there. Not that we haven't been serious before, we have, but we haven't, there's been very little pain. There's been very little sacrifice. We have to start doing it now. And so I think we take a hard look. For example, the assembly, there's that extra position. I'm not in favor of continuing that anymore. Areas where we can make changes and find efficiencies, we need to do it. If that means that we need to provide more support for them or find some other ways to give them help, whether it's on the communication side, because I know that's an area that they need help in. And our communications director has always offered to help them. So again, if we work together, we can find ways to save money. So and I want to say we're one county. We're not 12 counties. We're not 10 counties. We're one county. And when we message particularly, we need to be speaking as one county. Now, I understand the Cape Cod Commission needs to have their own communications people because there are regulations and there's specific regulatory requirements that need to be met with notices and stuff like that. I get all that. But we need to do a much better job in terms of how we at least coordinate with those.
Right.
All right. And how we find ways not to step on each other's news, because the reality is that we're getting, in spite of all of these collective efforts, we're getting less coverage than we were before.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're going and the results are getting worse. And there seems to be more activity being generated that in some cases conflicts with, a much more centralized and coordinated approach. So that's an area that I want to see some efficiency in. I've got some other items, but I can save them for later. For the time being, I think these are some priorities that we really need to sort of target and really bake into this whole budget process.
Ron?
Yeah, a few things. First of all, I agree with Mark on the communications issue. We've said this before. I think that all communications should originate from the commissioners, honestly, because we represent Barnstable County and we are the ones that the voters go to if something's good, and if something's bad, if there's bad news out there, we should announce it. So I think, you certainly give credit to the the appropriate people in the county, but I think that when an announcement is made about some initiative or something, it should come from the commissioner's office. As far as the budget goes, going back to, we've all done town finance, usually starts off with a budget message and list of priorities, saying, for instance, Mark mentioned the structurally balanced budget. Now, I'm going to have a little bit of a disagreement there because since our revenues, the towns determine the revenue after they pass the budget, but we have to go with what the revenue is. And if it fluctuates back and forth, it would be very impractical to say, well, this year we're not going to do too well. We're going to lay a guy off. And then next year we do a little better and say, hey, come back. You have to have some consistency in, I think that structurally balanced, I think about consistency in the services that we provide and using the revenue contingency fund to manage that consistency as much as is possible. It could come to the day when obviously there isn't going to be enough. But it's a tough job, and I agree with all. You can save money by looking into the details of the budget, identifying items big and small that you can carve off. But as far as the dredge goes, it's an enterprise fund. It should pay for itself. I'd like to see the lab pay for itself. But if you start getting into fees, then the towns can ask, well, what is our assessment paying for? If every service we provide gets its own individual expense,
The town assessments don't pay for enough, Ron.
Yeah, they
it
don't.
doesn't pay for enough, but
And
you
they
have to,
understand that.
you have to ask, what does it pay for? So I'm just saying is we have to justify our existence by
Well,
services we provide.
I think that's an excellent point. I think what I would like to see us accomplish in the budget is information on how much grants each department generate, right? Because I think that's information I know the assembly is interested in. We're interested in it as well, I think. Because I think we want to be able to argue to the larger community is how much money Barnstable, the investments in county government leverage significant additional dollars from state and
Right.
federal money. And I think it'd be helpful to articulate that. We also need to identify how much of our county budget is indeed in place to service the municipalities. That's information that's relevant for this larger conversation about how we survive long term, because we need to be in a survival mode. We need to be in a mode where we're thinking about how do we help county governments survive these financial challenges that we find ourselves in the middle of. I don't think when you were in Chatham, I would bet you your town administrator, Bill Henchy, did not present to you a budget that was not structurally balanced.
He did. It had to be. It is by definition structurally balanced because once you decide what your expenses are, you set the rate accordingly. So you set the levy at what the town meeting votes for. So by definition, and in Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I'm sure this is true of every town, you can't have a deficit.
But it is in our financial policy,
Mhm.
right?
And you need to count.
If you look at our county financial policy, we've pledged to present structurally financial.
Isn't that a contradiction to having a revenue contingency fund? If you're not going to use a revenue contingency fund to balance the budget,
No,
why do you
you
have it?
can budget directly from that contingency fund if you have a contingency that you need to take account of. We can do that.
Right.
That's what I'm looking
All
at.
right.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not like we
All
can't
right.
go there.
No, but I think we have to have a message to all of our departments that the commissioners want to see a very conservative approach to budgeting and looking for efficiencies in a variety of areas, recovery on overhead, and structurally balanced. I think we should insist on that.
And we're here to really help the towns be able to do what they can't do. So they're pooling their money with us. It's sort of like how it works on the federal level. We give our taxes hoping that it goes to things we need. Hasn't been happening that way, but but that's the bargain. That's what's understood. We pay these taxes and we're going to put these in to try to alleviate those bigger costs that you'll be paying
Down the road.
down the road. So, and we want the towns to be healthy as well as we're healthy. So we're conscious of.
Well, what happened is now, you guys have been here now for quite a few years, and so have I, and you've seen many budget presentations. Previous administrator also, and they've all said the same thing. We have done, basically a bare bones budget. You say mean, they've heard it. This is bare bones. We told every department to make all the economies they can. And now here we are another year. Are we saying,
No,
well, we've got to do the same thing again? And
No, actually, I'm asking that we do it, we really take a little bit more meat on.
okay, but what you're saying is, and I agree with you, is that it's one thing to say, okay, you got to look at, got to look at your expenses and try to limit them. Beyond that, we have to make decisions on what the county's going to do. Because I think that you can only get so much economy at cutting a little here and cutting a little there. Ultimately, are we going to continue to fund children? Are we going to continue to have, are we going to raise dredge rates? We're going to have to make the big decisions that go beyond just simple, line item here and there. And, we've been putting them off because fortunately, recently, we've had the revenue to cover us. We're not going to have the revenue to cover us. And I know you're going in the same direction, Mark. We're going to have to make some decisions.
Right. Right.
Okay, I think we've debated this and put out everybody's
All right.
feelings, and so we're
I'd
looking
like
for
to-
a motion,
I'd like to
please.
move that we adopt the budget process outline and timeline proposed by the administrator.
Second.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Perfect. Okay, so now we're going to go on to a draft resolution. This is being proposed by the Assembly of Delegates. Kayla Colombo got in touch with me saying that she felt very strongly that we make the state, come out in a unified statement about the SNAP.
Program.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
support of the SNAP program. They sent us their draft to add or subtract. And Vera has made a suggestion on this to add
I've given it to.
a whereas. And you could read out loud. We all have it in our email right now, but
I'm not sure we have to read the whole thing.
no, we don't have to read the whole
But it is
thing,
a
but
very strong endorsement of the SNAP program and its benefits to the many people here in Barnstable County that depend on it. So I would like to move that we approve the draft resolution proposed by the Assembly in support of the Supplemental Nutrition Program, SNAP, for Barnstable County, following submission of a final draft to the board chair and the administration. And that in the resolution that we adopt today, it include the slight edit that were referenced in an email to the board by the Assistant County Administrator.
and if I may, so what we're doing is we're going to be approving this draft as amended, and that amendment, so we have to vote on the amendment that
We
we're going to
probably
accept
should.
that.
Yeah.
So I would like
It was
to,
in my motion.
That's
well,
fine.
the amendment, we didn't state what the amendment was, and it really is just basically whereas there are 22,000 people, and it's good to actually acknowledge that here on Cape Cod that are beneficiaries of the SNAP. And that's as of now, not as of what's going to be if things are continuing to go in this kind of downward spiral. So we would like to add that into
So that's your
like the
motion
second
to add that.
whereas, I would say, supplemental provide.
Second awareness.
And I would just put it in there to say, this is, and these are the people, these 22,000 people, which are the school children, the federal furloughed workers, seniors, and why it's important to have good nutrition because it helps us function and have a quality of life. And, there's already poverty and disability here, and it's going to impact those people. So I think it's a very thorough. Do you have any other comments on
yes,
this?
I do. First
Please.
of all, I think people listening to this discussion may not have a total idea exactly what we're talking about. Basically, Michelle Wyman Colombo, and I actually had this discussion, and she was concerned about the ongoing problem with the SNAP benefits, and she wanted to submit this, which she did. And basically what it says, and I'll read one line out of it. It says, Barnstable County Commissioners and Assembly of Delegates fully support the ongoing work of the Barnstable County Extension programs to support nutrition, education, and food safety through programs for adult youth and preschoolers offered in partnership with schools and community agencies during this time of federal interruption. And I'd also like to say that this after I had a conversation with the delegate, I called the Extension Service and I made also the administrator aware of it. And of course, they were right on top of it already, and I know you got the communications from them saying that they were aware of the issue, and they were doing everything within our power to work with various groups, family pantries, and so on to deal with it. So I'll second this. And
So we're going to, our first vote is to vote that we agree to the amendment of $22,000. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 So now we're just going to, you can say that again if you want to, Mark. We're going to move to approve the draft resolution as amended by the Assembly of Delegates. The amended draft resolution proposed by the Assembly of Delegates.
Yep,
in
that's the
support.
motion I made.
Okay,
I second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good, thank you. Okay, now we're going to discuss a letter that we feel is important about the refundable Title V septic tax credit. Michael, you could maybe open this up. I know Brian Baumgartner was brought this to our attention, and I was happy to do so now that we're dealing with this a lot. You know, not just here, my town, but Truro, which is pretty rural, has a lot of septic, very costly. Everybody's whipped up.
So, so thank you for that intro, and it is timely. There's a bill has been filed in the House by one of our Cape legislators, Rep. Vieira. It's H4082, 4082, and it seeks to add a refundable tax credit to the residential property owners who undertake a loan for mandated Title V upgrades. So, so currently, as you know, our Aqua Fund program lends money to people to low interest, no interest for folks to upgrade their septics when they have to. So it's a nice program. It's a great program. This would potentially make those loans refundable, or essentially paid from state funds. And so that the homeowner would not be incurring as much of a liability as they currently are. Some of the septic systems can run upwards of $60,000. So it's something that's would be incredibly helpful to folks on the Cape, especially those folks who are year round. And so that's essentially the letter of support that Brian's looking for.
Yeah, to just you know, go into it a little bit more. We the town of Wellfleet's people voted to put so much money into a fund to help people who had to do this, say they were under one of these triggers. And but when so it goes up to $12,000. We voted to put it up to 25 because the bills that we were receiving from people were $80,000-$90,000 to upgrade the septic. And basically it's because there's not a lot of competition and there's very few people do this, and they are gouging people. They're taking advantage of this. And I know Brian's team is working very hard to certify people and to get more people into that system, so it will hopefully bring it down to a reasonable, realistic cost, because it's just taking all for the price. It's just an added thing. It's a very simple thing, but it does an amazing work. So, and towns, there's parts of every town that are just too far away, too remote, still rural, believe it or not, even though we're doing everything we can to kill that. But, and you just can't reach it with the sewer. It's just not going to happen. And these people, are they paying for the sewer and now this extra cost? So that all has to be worked out in towns. It's much more complicated. But I totally support this. And now that I've said enough, does anybody else have anything else to say?
yeah,
Yes.
I totally support it too. I think it's a great idea. But just to bring up, I mean, when you prefer a tax break to somebody for doing something, there must be somebody in an office up at the State House to determine what the cost is to the state for that tax break.
Mhm.
You know,
Well, there is, and that's why these things don't go anywhere.
that's why they don't
Yeah,
go
yeah,
anywhere.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
But let's
Well,
hopefully this one has.
That's right, this really
Yeah,
does,
let's
and
hope.
you know, and the state is pretty committed to this whole process of trying to clean up the mess we've made. So, all right, so did you make a motion?
No.
Go
No,
ahead, Ron.
I move to approve and authorize the submission of the draft House Bill 4082 support letter.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to the holidays. Happy holidays, everyone.
So,
And-
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the 2026 Barnstable County legal holiday schedule.
All right, second, you were,
I'll second that. At least you give us.
I've reviewed it. It looks good. I don't think there's a need for much discussion on it unless others do.
your
But I
stand.
think it's great, similar to what we've done in the past.
Right,
So
so
let's
the
do it
day
again.
before Thanksgiving will be a half day for everyone. Thanksgiving is off as it's a legal holiday. Friday is being treated as a skeleton day, which I think makes sense, those who,
I think you're on the, are you on the
I'm on your.
2020? Yeah, I think this is the 2026 legal holidays,
Right.
all of them,
Right,
not how we're gonna treat this year.
Yeah, there's another item afterwards, which is the work schedule,
Right,
right, which we're not on yet. We're on
you're on calendar
the
26.
calendar, yeah,
Yeah,
so, all right, so did we say all in favor?
Yeah.
Aye. All in favor, just to make sure that
Yep.
we're approving the
Aye.
holiday schedule.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Now we're going on to we're going to review Mr. Document.
no, not yet.
Doing the work schedule.
We got,
I'm sorry, the work schedule.
right, so we're dealing with the end of calendar year 25 now.
Yes,
And by virtue of the calendar, we've got some days that are a little quirky. So if you would like, I'll run through that.
go right ahead.
Okay. So what we are proposing, obviously, what we have normally done, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving is a normal workday, but we dismiss employees at noon. Thursday is Thanksgiving Day, obviously, that's a day off. The Friday after Thanksgiving is treated as a quote unquote skeleton day. And then fast forward to, so it just for mostly my benefit, because I get confused about what a skeleton day is. Essentially, employees that work that day, the county is open that day, but employees that work that day are eligible to take another day off prior to the following January 31st. So,
So that's for the 26th, the day after Christmas.
it's the 28th day after Thanksgiving.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
That's the skeleton day.
And for this year, Wednesday, Christmas Eve, proposing a noon closure, which I think is consistent with prior years. The 25th, we're going to let everybody have a day off on the 25th.
Yeah, we're not gonna be screwed.
And then Friday, since December 25th, Christmas Day, falls on a Thursday, the following Friday, we are proposing to treat as a floating holiday, which I think is similar to a skeleton day. But again, I get the lingo mixed up. But and in any case, an employee who does not work that day, who does work that day, the Friday after Christmas, is eligible to take a floating holiday before January 31st, following January 31st. And then just confirming that Thursday, January 1st is New Year's Day, a legal holiday.
And we're gonna have to meet on the next day. So
And you will be meeting the next day.
Yeah.
Friday,
Yeah.
the first day after the December.
Yeah.
Well, that,
And I will just point out, it's not on your memo copy of on your copy of the memo, but you are tentatively scheduled, if memory serves, to meet. You have a normal meeting day on December 31st, And I think I would propose that we not hold that meeting because you will be meeting 2 days later on January 2nd.
I agree. And
Okay.
if there's anything you need to sign or anything, we're here to do that. And
Anyway, so that's the draft for your approval on the end of this calendar year.
hey,
Can I make a motion?
yes, please.
I'd like to move that we approve the Barnstable County proposed 25, 26 holiday work schedule as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now we're moving on to review Mr. Dutton.
Now
Annual
you can.
performance.
About
He's been
time.
here a year,
Yeah.
and a little bit more. I know we're a little late on this and we have to blame, are we, you know?
No.
We're okay.
All
We're
right,
okay.
all
We're
right.
okay. We've been late on other things. but
I
we don't
know.
have to beat
Well,
ourselves up
If
on
if he
this.
was doing a bad job, I think we would have been, trying to get rid of him quicker. It looks like he's gonna stay. Really, huh?
Well, to kick this off,
Everybody else is
I'd be
leaving.
Happy to make a motion.
Well, we have Justina here. Do you have anything you want to review or no? No, okay,
Go ahead.
go for it.
So what I'd like to do, Madam Chair, is at least to get on the table a motion to accept the 2025 County Administrator Annual Job Performance Review. Put that on the table, and then I'm
And
happy
a second
to
on
I
that?
will second that.
initiate the
Okay.
discussion.
Go for it. Okay,
I think the process in doing the review was thorough, and I think it was comprehensive. And I would say, just for the folks that might be watching or paying attention to this, we evaluated the administrator's performance on 10 general management categories. And these are not unusual. These are very common for your top government managers. All right.
Mhm.
So the first category is personal characteristics. The second category is professional skills and status. The third category is relations with the county commissioners. 4 is the county administrators' talent and expertise and performance in evaluating the county's finances. Item 5 that we look at deals with personnel management. Item 6 is organizational leadership. 7 is public relations. 8 is community leadership. 9 is county operations and infrastructure. And item 10 is progress in meeting our collective goals that we establish every year and we work towards. And so in each of these 10 categories, there are a number of very specific sort of granular items, and there are roughly 5 in each of the 10 areas. And so our job as commissioners is to make a decision ranking performance on each of the subcategories on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is poor and 5 is outstanding. And I think this is about as comprehensive a review as can be done. It's very similar to some of the top municipal managers here on Cape Cod and around the Commonwealth. So I think we followed a very good process, one that's got a great track record. Kicking it off is a self-performance by the administrator, and I have to commend Michael. I thought he did an outstanding job in sort of
thorough.
his own review of his effort here. And then the form itself provides areas where we can make comments as individual commissioners. And so we prepared this and put this in a form that's easily reviewable by the public. I mean, part of this process is not only for us to do the review, but to make information available to the public. So we're on record being able to basically assess how the administrator is performing. And it's a very open, very transparent process. And it's ultimately designed to give the public a general sense of how we think the county management is going. So, and I'd just like to comment, if I could, on some of the comments that were made by some of, but by individual members of the board. I think this kind of sums it up, that Mr. Dutton has done an outstanding job unifying the diverse components of Barnstable County government into a more efficient organization. His diplomatic skills are impressive, and he's earned the respect of county employees and that of his peers. And thanks to his professionalism, it has been a successful transition to a new administration. I think that of all the comments kind of sums up, I think, essentially what this particular performance evaluation leads to. And so when we look at the score, in conclusion, the score shows a very positive and very strong. So out of the 1 to 5, the composite number is a 4.41 out of a possible 5.0, which I think is borderline between very good to outstanding.
Right.
So I think this has been a great year for the county. I think this has been a great year for Michael Dutton and the Board of Commissioners. And I'm glad we've reached this milestone. We've had a chance to do this review, and I fully support it.
Okay. Well, we could go on, Michael, and just talk about how great you are, but time is of the essence. But you get the gist.
No,
we
and
do appreciate you being here, and we appreciate your work, and you really have gotten out there in the community, and people know who you are and what we're doing, and
Yeah, just to say, and, you know, you're right, this is a small world we live in. I mean, I know the people involved. I know not as well as I should all the employees, but I certainly know the members of the assembly and a lot of other people who interact with county on a regular basis. And I have nothing but good things to say about Michael. I mean, if there were bad things, believe me, I would hear it.
right.
Because if people love to say
Yeah,
bad
they
things,
do.
and I have not heard any, so we can assume that that's going to continue. So,
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, you're on. You can't leave us.
Yeah. Well,
No, I appreciate it.
The next step is for us to work with him on the next set of goals.
Right,
Yeah.
you still have like a, 0.5%.
Well, you're giving me great room to grow, so I
Yes,
appreciate that.
Yes, that's right. Anyway, okay, so we're moving on to new business. Any new business from anyone?
No.
All right. No? Ron? Commissioner's agenda, consent agenda. Is there any,
I haven't seen anything that I want to pull out. And a couple of
Okay.
good things.
do we have a motion for that?
Madam Chair, I move to authorize the Commissioners' consent agenda items 8A through 8F as listed on the November 5th, 2025 agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Commissioners' reports. Everybody,
One item I'd like to report on is the next Cape and Islands Municipal Leaders Association meeting is going to be held on the 14th of November, Friday, 7:30 at Mass Maritime Academy in their conference center there on Tower Road. And the main topic of discussion is with Mass Development and officials from Mass Development to update us on the master planning update process out at Joint Base Cape Cod. We've made this a priority of ours.
Right.
We have finally come to an agreement on a master planning process. I'm thrilled that they've been able to work out an agreement, which we approved at our last meeting with the Cape Cod Commission.
Yes, we did.
So the commission staff will be involved in providing support to mass development. And I credit the commission for playing an instrumental role the last time we went through a master planning process and building public confidence and acceptance in the report. And they obviously provided tremendous technical support and information, but overall having their involvement was critical in building public support within the community. So if you want to know more about what's happening with this process, come to our breakfast meeting on Friday, November 14th.
Yes, Ron.
Yes, I attended, I think it was last Thursday, a meeting on housing, a housing conference. Well attended by perhaps several hundred people, wide ranging. The commission was also represented there, and it was a wide ranging discussion on the housing options open to Cape Cod. Senator Sear presented some legislation which he has posed at the State House to streamline the process. And basically, it was a positive look toward what we can do to increase affordable housing. I had some reservations about some of them, which I'm not going to bring up right now,
Right,
but we know basically they have presented their agenda, and it's well intentioned, and we'll have to see how far we can go. I mean, it's a big issue. Everyone admitted that the challenge is almost insurmountable as far as the expenses of houses on the Cape, the ability of people who moderate and even middle income to afford it. So, I mean, we're all on the same page as trying to go forward and letting people who need housing get housing. But the devil is in the details, and we'll see how it goes.
that's right. There's a lot of feelings about that out there. Anything else? That's it? Okay, just to follow up on that, I attended a discussion on impacts of climate change, and the assistant secretary or representative, Hoffa.
Yeah.
Melissa Hoffa came,
Climate change.
the climate change czar came to
Czarina.
listen to people, like, have you had impacts, flooding, what has happened out here? And it was really a great discussion about the changes that have occurred and what people have seen. And that is the challenge on the housing area, because we live in a very dynamic, changing coastline, and not everything that's sort of evident today is not necessarily evident tomorrow. So it all does is take a good storm with about 165 mile an hour winds to change everything. So it was really a very good discussion, and kind of a lot of food for thought of the future, especially on the Outer Cape, where it's really out there. So that's what I have to report. And now we're on to upcoming business. We have our calendar here, and anything that we should
I'd like to
talk about.
suggest, Madam Chair, I have something to put on
Thank you.
for the future, but I'd rather have first we hear the administrator on what he anticipates coming up for our next couple of meetings. Do we have on Wednesday, November 19th, an update from GZA
Mhm.
and Paul Ritzala on the permeable reactive wall?
Right. Got it.
I guess everything's going well on that. It looks like we're going to get an update on wildfire funding and the success the Cooperative Extension Service had in getting a big grant to help move an update on our regional wildfire management plan, which is terrific. Kudos to them.
Yes.
And then we have a couple of ordinances to take a look at from finance. So that's on for Wednesday, November 19th.
Mhm.
So that looks good. And I see we have some other interesting things coming up.
Coming up, right.
What I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is I'd like to make some proposals for a discussion, perhaps at our next meeting. I'd like to hand this out. I'd like to propose an adjustment. Can you pass that to Ron? There you go. Carol, one for you. Can you?
Sorry.
Oh,
I don't
yes.
know.
Yeah, we discussed it. I think
Yeah.
this is a,
Can you?
Thank
yeah,
you.
First.
There's another one.
Yeah.
What I'm proposing is that, starting next year, we change our meeting schedule a bit. That we have 2 meetings every month. I'm suggesting that our first meeting we have here, county offices, but the second meeting, the one that's on the third Wednesday of every month, that we have that out in the field. And that we meet, literally, we rotate each region. So we start off on the Upper Cape and work our way to the Lower Cape. So for example, and this is again just a proposal, but it would be our first meeting would be our first field meeting. That would be the third Wednesday of the month. So we go to Falmouth. And then the following month, February, we go to Barnstable. and that we go to a venue where there are people, whether it's town hall or the senior center,
Right.
right?
Right.
We work with our staff to make sure that the site is suitable in terms of accessibility and it's a hybrid capability. And that in each of the towns that we're in, when we go through the schedule, we actually talk about things that are relevant to them
To that
and their
town as
town
well.
or that region.
Right.
And that we have some discussion through our administrator with the manager in the town to facilitate them maybe even coming to the meeting,
Mhm.
either with their select board or with town staff, to talk about things that they really care about, so that we can begin developing a much stronger dialogue with each of our towns. Now, we obviously like having people come to see us, but I think since I've been here, I think it's going to be far more productive for us to go to our communities. And so that's what I'm proposing. So I wanted to put this in front of the board for today. I'd like to put it on the agenda for more discussion on Wednesday, November, our next meeting, if we could. And my hope is that we can have a chance to sort of vet it with staff, to talk over the mechanics of it, how it might work, what the problems might be, and we can have a more robust discussion about this at our next meeting.
Yes, well, I think it's a very good idea, and I wish we'd probably done it earlier. The way I think it's worded in the charter is that the chair determines the time and location of the meeting. So
Right.
the chair can say we can meet tomorrow, and,
Right.
and so, but, so that's really where the authority comes from, but certainly it's a great idea. And encourage whoever is chair to schedule these meetings as Mark described. Now, it's going to be some time when during budget season, when we're really up against it. So we're going to have to make longer meetings if we're going to discuss normal order of business and plus the specific things we do for the individual towns. They used to do this, I remember Bill Doherty and
I remember they
Lance
would
coming
do
around,
they would do a roadshow.
especially close to election time when they
Yes,
describe all the
always at
all the
election
wonderful
time.
things that they did.
All right.
Right.
So,
Well, I'll make sure we
we are
visit
kind of
Chatham
going
on a
into-
regular basis.
Yes,
When-
that's right. We're going to visit Chatham. But it also is a very good dialogue for people to understand how we interact with the towns, what our role is, and to hear from the towns. These are things that we could, and we might generate a lot of good synergy there. And it also, Mark is thinking ahead, I can see, because we're going to have renovations here, so it's just as well to be out of the building. And this is the year to do it, and hopefully it will be an ongoing practice. So we'll put this on. So far, you get the sense of the room, Mark, of how we're going to go with this. We'll put this on for the next discussion.
One little fly in the ointment is that we don't know when these towns have their regular selectmen's meetings.
Right. Those
No, they
could be
do,
a
no,
lot of-
they do those at night,
Right.
but the thinking behind this
This is daytime.
is that we do this in the daytime.
And people.
And if we can at least agree to a tentative schedule ahead of time, people can plan around it, all right?
Yeah.
So they'll have a month, 2 months, 10 months to know that this is the date we're coming out. And by then, I think as we get closer to those dates, the towns will be in a much better position to engage with us and our staff over the kinds of things they'd like to talk to us about or would like us to showcase. I know, for example, the topic of resiliency, there's some communities where this is a very hot topic, and I think I think it'd be great for us to hear firsthand some of the pressing issues that the towns are wrestling with and where they think we could be of some help.
Right. Okay, moving on. We are now up to county administrator and our staff reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one other thing to add to your November 19th meeting. We will have two draft budget message and capital budget message for you to review and approve. And obviously, we'll be working on that, have been working on that, and we'll push that out to you as soon as we have a draft in place. Just to let you know, Sonia let me know that she's finalizing the annual report for last fiscal year. And so that will be coming to you fairly soon, probably your first December meeting, perhaps your second December meeting. And just to let you know that we are continuing to work on the composting initiative, Joint Base Cape Cod, I've been meeting this week with members of, some members of the Barnstable Advisory Committee and then last night Falmouth Advisory Committee, which was a great meeting. A lot of very supportive comments and a lot of interest in getting this done, which is good news. And I will say all the administrators in the towns, managers in the towns are fully on board. So we'll continue that work. Our dredge is currently, both our dredges are currently working in Pompanesett Bay in Mashpee, doing one of the largest jobs I think they've ever had. I think somebody mentioned it earlier, the challenges to the dredge. October saw 16 days when they could not get out on the water due to the weather. And so that's a lot more than last year. I think it was 8 days. So it's about double that. And I think just to touch on the rates and the structure, departmental structure, that is something that we've been diving into. The dredge, Ken has put together a subcommittee of the Dredge Advisory Board to really dig into Leslie Ann and Anchor QA's report on management revisions that will help us sort of accelerate or at least keep careful tabs on the permitting process. And so we are looking at that, and we'll be coming to you for some revisions to how that department looks. I'll be hosting the Cape's municipal managers next week. So I'll have an opportunity to do a deep dive into our preliminary budget numbers and what we're looking at on revenues and pursuant to what you talked about a little bit, just identifying what county services really offset the town's burden and how we leverage our budgets to really get a lot of grant funding that supports all the towns.
While you're on that,
Yeah, go right
Madam
ahead.
Chair?
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful if you could, this proposal to go out to the town.
Absolutely.
Could you raise that with the
Absolutely.
managers and get
Yeah.
some
Yeah,
feedback
get a
and
sense of
report
that.
that at our next meeting?
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. As you know, we have a new Speaker of the Assembly who I met with last week, and I think we're going to have a very good relationship there. Fingers crossed.
I think they did a good choice.
And even though you haven't approved a message of any sort, obviously our capital planning and our budget planning is well underway. So the work is going on in the background on that. And that is what I have.
Excellent. All right, that brings us to item 12.
Madam Chair, I move to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
All right, and right now we are going to adjourn at 11:41, and we were a little late due to technical difficulty. I didn't say that in the beginning of the meeting, and we apologize for that, but here we are. All right, so 11:41, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being patient. For your work.